Lily had always been a quiet observer. She spent most of her time watching the world move around her, never quite feeling like she belonged. It wasn't that she disliked people, but she had a way of blending into the background. She worked as a waitress at an upscale event hall, a job she had picked up to help pay the bills. The place was fancy and the guests were even fancier. Every evening, Lily moved through the rooms with a grace she had perfected over the years. She wasn't the star of the show, nor did she want to be. She was just a small part of the bigger picture, doing her best to make sure everything ran smoothly. Tonight was no different. The room was filled with well-dressed guests, laughing and chatting over cocktails. The crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling like stars, casting soft light over everything. Waiters and waitresses glided between tables, their movements fluid, their faces carefully neutral. Everything had to be perfect. The event had to go off without a hitch. Lily had worked here for over a year, and she had gotten used to the rhythm of it all. She was quiet and efficient, always smiling, always making sure that nothing went wrong. But tonight there was a different kind of buzz in the air. There was something extra special about this event, something Lily couldn't quite put her finger on. Maybe it was the guests with their high-end fashion and their shiny smiles, or maybe it was the feeling that something unexpected was about to happen. She didn't get the chance to dwell on it for long. The event coordinator walked by, giving her a quick nod as he passed. He was one of those people who never seemed to stop moving. He was already running around, making sure the music was on point, the food was perfect, and that the guests were entertained. But then something unusual happened. The music, which had been playing softly in the background, suddenly stopped. Lily paused for a moment, glancing up at the grand piano in the corner of the room. The pianist was nowhere to be seen. It wasn't like him to just leave. A moment later, she heard the frantic voices of the staff, murmuring about an issue with the hired pianist. Apparently, the man had taken ill and there was no one to replace him. The event coordinator was visibly stressed, his face twisted in frustration. Lily had always been one to quietly observe, but this was different. She noticed the way the other waiters and waitresses reacted. Some tried to ignore the issue, carrying on with their tasks. Others whispered to each other, unsure of how to help. But the coordinator was beginning to panic. He needed someone to step in, someone who could play the piano and salvage the evening. But no one volunteered. Lily, for the first time, found herself in the spotlight. She had always kept her talents hidden. She had grown up playing the piano, but it was a part of her life she had never shared with anyone at the event. It wasn't that she didn't want to perform. It was just that she didn't feel like she belonged in that world. She had learned to play for herself, a way to escape the stresses of life, not to entertain others. But as she watched the coordinator's growing frustration, something shifted inside of her. She had always been the quiet one, the one who stayed in the background. But this was different. This was her moment. She had a choice. She could let the event fall apart, or she could step up and do something that might change everything. Lily hesitated for only a moment. She had never played for an audience before, never performed in front of anyone other than herself. But as the coordinator looked around, clearly out of ideas, she felt a strange sense of courage wash over her. She wasn't sure where it came from, but it felt right. She raised her hand, her voice a little shaky as she spoke. "I can play," she said quietly, her heart pounding in her chest. The coordinator turned, blinking in surprise. "You?" he asked, his voice uncertain. He looked her up and down, his eyes scanning her uniform and her nervous expression. "You play the piano?" Lily nodded. "Yes," she said softly. "I can play." For a brief moment, the coordinator seemed unsure. But the silence in the room was growing unbearable, and the need for a solution was urgent. He didn't have time to question whether or not she was good enough. "All right," he said, sounding relieved. "Go ahead. The piano is right there." Lily's heart raced as she walked toward the grand piano. The guests were still talking, unaware of the chaos happening behind the scenes. She reached the piano, her hands trembling slightly as she sat down on the bench. She stared at the keys for a moment, gathering her thoughts. It felt like the entire world was watching her, even though she knew they weren't. This wasn't her world, and she had always kept her talents to herself for a reason. But as her fingers hovered over the keys, something inside of her clicked. She wasn't just a waitress anymore. She wasn't just a quiet, invisible person in the background. She was someone who had a gift, a talent that had been hidden for so long, and tonight she was going to show the world. With a deep breath, Lily began to play. The first few notes were hesitant, but then her fingers found their rhythm. The music began to flow from her, filling the room with a soft, beautiful melody. The sound of the piano was rich and warm, a stark contrast to the buzzing of voices in the room. As the music filled the air, it was as if everything else faded away. Lily lost herself in the music, her hands moving with ease as the melody grew stronger. The guests, who had been murmuring among themselves, slowly began to quiet down. At first it was a subtle shift, a few people turning their heads toward the piano. But then, more and more people began to stop what they were doing and listen. Lily played on, her fingers dancing across the keys, her heart beginning to settle into the rhythm of the music. The crowd, once distracted and restless, was now mesmerized. Every note seemed to draw them in deeper, the soft strains of the piano echoing in the vast space. It wasn't just the music that captivated them, it was the way Lily played. There was something about it, something real and raw that spoke to the guests on a deeper level. They weren't just hearing a performance, they were witnessing something real, something that came from the heart. The room had fallen silent. No one moved, no one spoke. All eyes were on Lily, and for the first time in a long time she felt seen. Not just as a waitress, not just as someone who blended into the background, but as someone who had something special to offer. It was a feeling she had never experienced before, and it made her feel alive in a way she hadn't known was possible. She played for what felt like an eternity, lost in the music and in the moment. And when she finally finished, the room stayed still, as if time had stopped. The last note hung in the air, lingering just long enough before fading into silence. Lily sat there, her hands still resting on the keys, her heart racing. She was waiting for something, anything, and then the applause began. It was slow at first, a few people clapping in disbelief, but then it grew louder, more enthusiastic. The guests were on their feet, clapping and cheering, their faces filled with admiration and surprise. Lily didn't know what to do. She had never performed for an audience before, never expected anything like this. She was still in shock, still trying to process what had just happened. But the applause kept coming, and she slowly stood up, bowing slightly, unsure of what to say or do next. For the first time in her life, she felt like she had truly stepped into the spotlight. And in that moment, she knew everything had changed. Lily stood at the piano, her heart still racing from the applause. It took her a moment to fully comprehend what had just happened. The room had been filled with music, her music, and for a brief moment she felt like she had captured the attention of everyone in the room. She had always worked behind the scenes, blending in with the crowd, but this was different. This was her moment. As the applause died down, she quickly gathered her composure, offering a shy smile to the guests who continued to clap and cheer. The event coordinator, who had been the one to urge her to play in the first place, approached her with wide eyes and a grin. He looked at her as though he had just witnessed something extraordinary. "Lily, that was incredible," he said, his voice filled with genuine amazement. "I had no idea you could play like that." That was exactly what this event needed. Lily could feel the weight of his words. She was still in shock, her mind racing to catch up with what had just happened. She had never played for such a large audience before, let alone at an event like this. It had been a spontaneous decision, one that had come from a moment of panic rather than any grand plan. But now she felt like she had done something important, something meaningful. The validation from the coordinator, who had seen hundreds of performers in his time, felt like a confirmation of something she had always known deep down. She had talent. As she stepped away from the piano, she could hear the whispers around her. Guests were talking among themselves, their voices low but full of admiration. Some were still clapping, others were nodding in approval. Lily felt a strange mix of embarrassment and pride. She had never been the center of attention, and now it felt almost overwhelming, but there was also a sense of accomplishment, a feeling of validation she had never expected. For a moment, she wondered if this was what it felt like to truly be seen. The coordinator clapped her on the back, bringing her out of her thoughts. "You should be performing for crowds like this all the time," he said, his voice brimming with excitement. "That was the best thing that's happened to this event." Lily didn't know how to respond. She had never imagined that anyone would say such things to her. She was just a waitress. She had spent her days serving drinks, clearing plates, and blending into the background. She had never thought of herself as someone who could perform at events like this, let alone be praised for her talents. It was a strange feeling, one that she wasn't sure how to handle. The coordinator continued, not noticing Lily's discomfort. "I'm serious," he said. "You could make a real career out of this. Have you thought about performing professionally?" "You've got a gift, Lily." Lily felt her cheeks flush. She wasn't used to receiving compliments, let alone ones like this. She had always kept her passion for music to herself, never dreaming that it could lead to anything more than a hobby. The idea of performing for a living seemed so far out of reach, so unrealistic. She had a job to do, bills to pay, and dreams that felt out of her grasp. Music was just something she did for herself, not for anyone else. But as the coordinator continued to speak, she felt a flicker of something in her chest. Could it be possible? Could she really turn her love for music into something more? She didn't have the answers, but for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to entertain the thought. The rest of the night went by in a blur. Lily continued to serve drinks and clear plates, but her mind was elsewhere. She couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. The way the crowd had reacted to her playing, the way the coordinator had spoken to her, it felt surreal. She kept telling herself that it had been a fluke, that maybe it was just a one-time thing, but deep down she couldn't deny the spark of possibility that had been ignited inside her. When the event finally came to an end, Lily was one of the last to leave. As she gathered her things, the coordinator approached her again, this time with a serious expression on his face. "Lily, I know this might be a lot to take in, but I need to ask you something," he said. "I know a guy, a music producer, who's always looking for new talent. He was at the event tonight and he was really impressed by you. He wants to meet with you. I think you should take the opportunity. You've got something special." Lily's heart skipped a beat. She had heard of music producers, of course. They were the people who helped turn unknown musicians into stars, the gatekeepers to a world of fame and success. The thought of meeting one was both thrilling and terrifying. What if it was just a fluke? What if they didn't like her music after all? But there was also something else, something she couldn't ignore. The possibility that this could be her chance, her opportunity to do something more with her life, to follow her dreams instead of always wondering, what if? "I don't know," she began, her voice trailing off. The coordinator smiled, understanding her hesitation. "I know it's a big step, but sometimes you've got to take a leap. You've got the talent, Lily. Don't let fear hold you back. You never know where it could lead." Lily stood there for a moment, her thoughts racing. She had always been so cautious, always playing it safe. But tonight had shown her something she hadn't realized before. She didn't have to stay in the background forever. She could take control of her life, follow her passion, and maybe, just maybe, make something of herself. "All right," she said, her voice steady now. "I'll meet him." The coordinator beamed. "I knew you'd make the right choice. I'll give you his contact details. Don't waste this opportunity, Lily. It could change everything for you." That night, as she left the event hall and stepped out into the cool evening air, Lily felt a strange sense of hope building inside her. She had no idea what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was on the edge of something new, something exciting. She didn't know where this path would take her, but she was willing to take the first step. As she made her way home, her mind raced with possibilities. Maybe this was the start of something big. Maybe her dreams of becoming a musician weren't as far out of reach as she had always thought. The road ahead was uncertain, but Lily had never been more ready to face it. The next few days passed in a blur for Lily. She couldn't stop thinking about what the event coordinator had said, about the music producer, the opportunity, the possibility of turning her passion for music into something more. But there was also a part of her that was afraid, that doubted herself. She had never imagined her life could change so quickly, and now that it was happening, she wasn't sure if she was ready. When she got home that evening, Lily stared at the small piece of paper the coordinator had given her. It was simple, just a name and a phone number, but it felt heavy in her hands. She had never considered that someone might be interested in her music, let alone a professional music producer. She had always kept her dreams locked inside, far from the public eye. Music had been something personal, something she did for herself, but now, it felt like her passion was about to be thrust into the spotlight. For the next couple of days, Lily couldn't bring herself to make the call. She kept telling herself that she wasn't ready, that it wasn't the right time. But deep down she knew that if she didn't take the chance now, she might never get another opportunity like this again. The thought of letting it slip away made her feel uneasy, as though she'd be denying herself something important. Finally, after much deliberation, she decided to pick up the phone. Her fingers hesitated above the dialer, but she took a deep breath and pressed the numbers. As the phone rang, Lily's heart began to race. She had no idea what to expect, and the uncertainty made her nervous. What if the producer didn't like her music? What if he thought she wasn't good enough? When the phone clicked, she was met by a calm, professional voice. "Hello, this is Vincent." Lily's breath caught in her throat. She had imagined this moment 100 times, but now that it was real, she felt unprepared. "Hi, my name is Lily. I was referred to you by the event coordinator from the gala last week." "Oh, yes," Vincent replied, his voice warm and friendly. "He mentioned you. He said you had quite the performance. How are you?" Lily's nerves began to ease a little. He seemed genuine, not at all like the intimidating professional she had imagined. "I'm good, thank you." I've been thinking a lot about what he said. I wasn't sure if I should call, but I wanted to take a chance." "I'm glad you did," Vincent said. "Look, I heard you played piano at the event. We don't usually get someone with that level of skill out of nowhere. I'd love to hear more about what you've been working on. If you're open to it, I'd like to set up a meeting." Lily was taken aback. She had expected some resistance, some hesitation, but there it was, an invitation to pursue something bigger than she had ever imagined. "That sounds amazing," she said, her voice almost a whisper. "I'd love that. Great," Vincent said. "How about this weekend? I'll send you the details and we'll go from there. It'll be a casual meeting. No pressure, just a chance to chat and hear you play." Lily couldn't believe it. She had done it. She had made the call, and now she had a meeting with a music producer, a real one. The feeling that washed over her was a mixture of excitement and fear. This was happening, and there was no going back. When the weekend arrived, Lily prepared for the meeting with a combination of anticipation and dread. She didn't know what to expect, and the uncertainty only made her more anxious. She had never been to a professional music meeting before, and she wasn't sure what was expected of her. All she had was her love for music, the skills she had honed over the years, and the belief that this might be her only shot. She spent the morning trying to calm herself, going over the songs she wanted to play, and reminding herself that this was her chance to prove herself. As the hour for the meeting drew closer, she dressed in her best outfit, which was simple but neat, a far cry from the glamorous attire she had seen at the event. She wasn't one for dressing up, but she wanted to make a good impression. Arriving at the studio, Lily was greeted by Vincent, who stood outside the door with a welcoming smile. "Lily, it's great to meet you in person," he said, shaking her hand. "Come on in, I'll show you around." The studio was nothing like Lily had ever imagined. It was filled with instruments, sound equipment, and soft lighting that gave it a cozy yet professional feel. There were people milling about, working on various projects, but Vincent led her to a quiet corner where a grand piano sat. "Here we are," Vincent said. "Go ahead and sit down. Play something for me." Lily's nerves flared up again. She had been expecting some kind of formal introduction or conversation first, but now she was being asked to play. No practice, no warming up, just play. Her palms felt sweaty as she sat down on the bench, and for a brief moment, she thought about running out of the room. But she reminded herself that this was what she had wanted. She couldn't back out now. Taking a deep breath, Lily placed her fingers on the keys. She started with a simple melody, something she had written herself. It was a song that had always felt like her own secret, a piece of herself she had never shared with anyone. The notes flowed naturally, and as she played, she let the music take over, allowing herself to forget about the pressure and just enjoy the moment. The melody filled the space, and for a few minutes, Lily was lost in the music. When she finished, she slowly lifted her hands from the keys. The room was silent, and she felt a surge of self-doubt. What if Vincent didn't like it? What if it wasn't good enough? Vincent was looking at her intently, his expression unreadable. After what felt like an eternity, he spoke. "That was beautiful, Lily," he said softly. "You've got something really special. There's a depth to your playing that you can't teach. It's raw, it's real. You're not just playing notes. You're telling a story." Lily's heart fluttered in her chest. She hadn't expected such a response. She had thought she would have to work harder to impress him, but he seemed to understand the emotion behind her music, the very thing that had always drawn her to the piano in the first place. Do you have any other songs? Vincent asked. Anything else you've been working on? Lily nodded, feeling more at ease now. She played a few more pieces, each one different from the last. Some were slow and haunting, while others were lively and energetic. By the time she finished, she could see the genuine interest in Vincent's eyes. He wasn't just being polite. He was listening, really listening. You've got a lot of potential, Vincent said. I think we could do something great together. I'd like to help you develop your music and see where it can go. Lily's mind raced. She had come to this meeting unsure of what to expect, but now she felt like everything was shifting. This was no longer just a dream. It was real. She was sitting in front of a producer who believed in her, who saw something in her music that she hadn't even fully understood herself. I'd love that, Lily said, her voice steady for the first time. I want to do this. I want to see where it can take me. Vincent smiled. Good. We'll start by working on some tracks, maybe do a few demos. From there, we'll figure out the next steps. But first, we need to get you out of that mindset that you're just a waitress. You're an artist, and this is your time. As Lily left the studio that day, she couldn't contain her excitement. She had done it. She had taken the leap, and now there was no turning back. The path ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time, Lily felt like she was on the right track. This was the beginning of something new, something she had always dreamed of, and she was ready to embrace it fully. Over the next few weeks, Lily found herself living in a whirlwind of excitement, nerves, and pure exhilaration. What had started as a spontaneous moment of courage had quickly transformed into a journey she hadn't anticipated. She was no longer just a waitress at an upscale event hall. She was an artist, working with a producer who believed in her and her music. The thought still seemed unreal, but every time she sat down to play, it became more and more clear that she was exactly where she needed to be. The studio became her second home. It was a place of creativity, a space where she could explore her music without judgment or fear. Vincent was patient with her, encouraging her to push boundaries and find new ways to express herself through her music. They spent hours in the studio, experimenting with different sounds and styles. Lily never thought she could enjoy the process of creating as much as she did. The music was taking on a life of its own, and she was learning how to shape it, how to give it direction. Vincent introduced her to other musicians, people who had been in the industry for years. At first, Lily felt out of place. She was just a beginner, a newcomer to the world of professional music. But the other musicians were kind and welcoming, offering advice and sharing their experiences. They didn't look down on her. Instead, they encouraged her to keep going, to keep developing her sound. It wasn't all easy. There were days when she felt like she wasn't good enough, when the doubts crept in and made her question her decision to pursue music professionally. Sometimes the hours in the studio felt long, and the progress seemed slow. But with every setback, Lily grew stronger. She learned to trust herself, to believe in her ability to create something meaningful. She found comfort in the music, in the way it allowed her to express emotions that words couldn't capture. One afternoon, as she sat at the piano working on a new melody, Vincent came into the studio with a big grin on his face. "I've got some good news," he said, his voice filled with excitement. "I've been talking to some people, and we've got a chance to play at a local venue next month. It's a small place, but it's a great opportunity to get your music out there. What do you think?" Lily's heart skipped a beat. A live performance? The thought terrified her. She had never performed in front of a crowd before, let alone in a professional setting. She had always played in private, where no one could hear her but herself. The idea of standing in front of a crowd, of having people listen to her music, made her feel exposed and vulnerable. But as the seconds ticked by, she realized something. This was what she had always wanted. She had dreamed of being heard, of sharing her music with others. The fear was natural, but it didn't have to hold her back. She had come this far, and now she had a chance to take another step forward. "I'll do it," she said, her voice steady despite the nerves swirling in her stomach. "I'll perform." Vincent beamed. "That's the spirit. We'll work on a set, get everything ready, and you'll be great. I know you will." In the weeks that followed, Lily threw herself into preparing for the performance. She worked tirelessly on her set list, practicing her songs over and over again. She knew the music inside and out, but performing live was a whole different experience. She had to learn to connect with the audience, to let the music flow through her in a way that felt natural and authentic. It wasn't just about hitting the right notes. It was about telling a story, about making people feel what she felt when she played. There were days when she felt overwhelmed by the pressure. What if she messed up? What if the audience didn't like her music? The doubts would creep in, but she pushed them aside. She reminded herself that she had made it this far, that she was capable of more than she realized. She was no longer just the quiet waitress. She was an artist, and she was ready to share her work with the world. The night of the performance arrived, and Lily found herself standing backstage, her heart racing. The venue was small but cozy, with a warm, inviting atmosphere. The crowd was a mix of people, some there for the music, others just enjoying a night out. Lily took a deep breath as she looked out at the audience, her hands trembling slightly. She couldn't see their faces clearly, but she could feel their eyes on her, waiting for her to play. Vincent appeared at her side, offering a reassuring smile. "You've got this," he said, his voice calm. "Just remember why you're here. Play from the heart." Lily nodded, trying to calm the fluttering in her chest. She wasn't sure if the nerves would ever go away, but she knew that they were a sign that she cared. She cared about the music, about this moment. She stepped out onto the stage, the spotlight shining on her, and for a brief second everything went silent. It was as if the world had stopped, and all that mattered was the music. She sat at the piano, her fingers resting lightly on the keys. The crowd was waiting, their eyes fixed on her. The pressure was overwhelming, but she took a deep breath and started to play. The first few notes were shaky, but as the music grew, so did her confidence. She let the melodies wash over her, allowing the music to take her to places she had never been before. The audience was silent, completely engrossed in the performance. Lily could feel their attention, their energy, and it fueled her. She played one song after another, her hands moving with ease across the keys, her heart pouring into every note. As the music filled the room, she realized something. This was where she belonged. She wasn't just playing for herself anymore. She was playing for them. The connection between her and the audience was undeniable, and it made the music feel even more powerful. By the time she finished her set, Lily was exhausted but elated. She had done it. She had faced her fear and performed in front of a live audience. The applause that followed was deafening, and for the first time Lily felt truly seen. She had stepped into the light, and the world had responded. After the performance, Vincent came to congratulate her. "You were amazing," he said, his face glowing with pride. "I knew you had it in you." Lily smiled, still in a daze from the performance. "I didn't know if I could do it," she admitted. "But I'm glad I did." "You did more than just perform," Vincent said. "You made a connection. That's what music is all about. You've got something special, Lily, and I'm so glad you're sharing it with the world." As Lily left the venue that night, her heart was full. The nerves and doubt had faded into the background, replaced by a sense of accomplishment and excitement. This was just the beginning. There were still so many steps to take, so much to learn, but for the first time she felt like she was on the right path. She had found her voice, and she was ready to keep singing her song. The months that followed Lily's first live performance were a whirlwind. What started as a single opportunity to play at a local venue had blossomed into a series of performances, each one more exciting than the last. As her confidence grew, so did her following. People began to take notice of her music, and before long, she had a small but dedicated group of fans who came to every show, eager to hear her play. Lily's music, which had once been a private escape, was now being shared with the world. The more she performed, the more she realized how much she loved connecting with her audience. Each note she played was an invitation into her world, a world of vulnerability, emotion, and raw expression. She wasn't just playing songs. She was telling stories, sharing pieces of herself with every performance. The support she received was overwhelming. People often approached her after shows to express how much her music had touched them. It wasn't just the melodies that resonated with her audience, it was the way she played, the way she made them feel. There was something in her music that spoke to people, something real and authentic that they couldn't ignore. It was this connection that kept her going, even on the tough days. But as much as Lily loved performing, the pressure began to build. The more successful she became, the more expectations she faced. It wasn't just about making music anymore. It was about living up to the hype, keeping the momentum going, and constantly striving for perfection. At times, it felt like a heavy burden to carry. She found herself spending more time in the studio, working on new material. But there were days when the joy of creating seemed to slip away, replaced by the fear of not being good enough. One evening, after a long day of recording, Lily sat in the quiet studio, staring at the piano in front of her. She had just finished another song, but it didn't feel right. It felt forced, like she was trying too hard to meet someone else's expectations rather than creating something that came from the heart. Frustration bubbled up inside her, and for the first time in months she felt a deep sense of doubt creeping in. Vincent walked into the studio, his face filled with concern. He could tell something was off. "Hey, you all right?" he asked, sitting down beside her. Lily shook her head, her hands resting on the keys. "I don't know. I just feel stuck. Everything I'm working on doesn't feel like me anymore. It's like I'm trying to write what people want to hear, not what I want to say." Vincent nodded, understanding the weight of her words. "I get it. But you've got to remember why you started this in the first place. It wasn't for anyone else, it was for you. Your music is your voice, Lily. Don't let the pressure to succeed drown out what's real." Lily sighed, looking up at him. "I don't know if I can keep doing it like this. I'm not sure if I know who I am as an artist anymore." Vincent smiled gently. "You'll find your way back. Sometimes you need to take a step back and rediscover what made you fall in love with music in the first place. Don't let the noise get to you. Just play and let the music come from your heart. That's when it's at its best." His words stuck with her. That night, Lily returned to her apartment feeling a renewed sense of determination. She needed to reconnect with her music, to remember what it felt like to create without the weight of expectations on her shoulders. So she sat down at her piano and began to play. She didn't have a specific song in mind. She just let her fingers guide her, playing whatever came to her naturally. And slowly the music began to flow again, simple, pure, and honest. It was in that moment that Lily realized something important. She didn't have to be perfect. She didn't have to fit into anyone's mold or live up to anyone's expectations. Her music was her own, and that was enough. She could create from a place of authenticity, without worrying about how it would be received. And with that realization, the music came alive again. In the weeks that followed, Lily found a new sense of peace in her creative process. She no longer felt the need to prove herself. Instead, she embraced the joy of making music for herself. She spent more time in the studio, but this time, it was on her terms. The pressure had faded, replaced by a sense of freedom and excitement. She was creating music that was true to who she was, not what others wanted her to be. The next performance she gave was different from all the others. It was at a larger venue with a bigger crowd and a more polished set. But this time Lily wasn't focused on impressing anyone. She wasn't worried about hitting every note perfectly or making sure her performance was flawless. She was just playing, just letting the music speak for itself. As she stood on stage, bathed in the warm light of the spotlight, she felt a calmness wash over her. The crowd was there, but she wasn't performing for them. She was performing for herself. She played with abandon, her fingers moving effortlessly across the keys, her heart open and vulnerable. The audience was captivated, but it didn't matter to her. She was in her element, and that was all that mattered. When the final note echoed through the venue, the applause was deafening. Lily stood there for a moment, soaking it all in. The overwhelming rush of emotion was unlike anything she had ever experienced. She had found her way back to the music, and in doing so, she had rediscovered herself as an artist. Backstage, Vincent was waiting for her. "That was incredible," he said, his eyes shining with pride. "You were amazing out there." Lily smiled, her heart still racing from the performance. "It felt good," she said. "For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I had to prove anything. I just played." Vincent nodded. "That's the secret, Lily. When you stop trying to impress and just let the music come from your heart, that's when it resonates with people. That's when it's real." In the months that followed, Lily's career continued to grow. She began to tour, performing in cities she had once only dreamed of visiting. Each show was an opportunity to share her music with more people, to create connections with her audience. And with every performance, she felt more and more at home in her own skin. But despite the success, Lily never lost sight of what mattered most, her love for music. She didn't chase fame or recognition. She chased authenticity, the ability to make music that was true to who she was. She learned that it was okay to struggle, that it was okay to question herself, The journey of being an artist wasn't about perfection. It was about growth, self-expression, and connection. One day, as she sat at the piano in her studio, writing a new song, Lily realized how far she had come. The shy, unsure girl who had once been afraid to play in front of an audience was now standing on stages around the world, sharing her heart with anyone who would listen. It had been a long road full of challenges and moments of doubt, but she had found her way. Her music had become more than just a career. It had become her purpose. She was no longer just a waitress or someone hiding in the background. She was Lily, the artist, the creator, the storyteller, and every time she played, she knew that she was exactly where she was meant to be. Lily's life had changed in ways she never imagined. What started as a small performance at a local venue had blossomed into a full-fledged career in music. She had toured, recorded, and gained a following. Yet despite her success, there was always a nagging feeling in the back of her mind, a feeling that the real journey was just beginning. The transition from a quiet, behind-the-scenes life to being in the spotlight had been overwhelming at times. It was a world filled with long hours, tight schedules, and constant pressure to deliver. But through it all, Lily had remained grounded. She had learned to focus on what truly mattered, the music. And in doing so, she had rediscovered a part of herself that she had long forgotten. But now the pressure was greater than ever. There was an upcoming album release, and with it came the expectations of both her fans and the industry. Every decision felt magnified. What songs to include, what direction her music should take, all of it seemed so critical. As the release date drew nearer, Lily found herself questioning everything. Was this the right path? Was she staying true to herself, or was she simply chasing the next big thing? One afternoon, while sitting in the studio, Lily received a call that would change everything. It was from Vincent, her producer. His voice was calm, but there was a noticeable tension in it. "Lily, I've been thinking a lot about the album, and I think we need to have a serious talk." Lily's stomach dropped. She had been working tirelessly on the album for months, and the thought of anything going wrong felt unbearable. "Of course," she said, trying to mask the worry in her voice. "What's on your mind?" "We've been pushing hard to meet the deadlines, but I feel like we're losing something important in the process," Vincent said. "The music is starting to sound manufactured. I know we've got a lot of pressure to make this album a hit, but I think we need to step back and reevaluate. What made your music special was how real it felt, how raw it was. I'm afraid we've lost that." Lily sat back in her chair, the weight of his words sinking in. She had heard the same thing from others, about how she needed to grow, how she needed to evolve. But somewhere along the way, she had lost sight of what made her music so powerful in the first place. It wasn't about chasing trends or pleasing everyone. It was about being authentic, telling stories that mattered to her. She thought about the early days when she first picked up the piano, when she played for herself and no one else. The music had flowed naturally then, without any expectations, without any outside pressure. It wasn't about trying to impress anyone. It was simply about expressing herself. Vincent's voice brought her back to the present. "I think you need to reconnect with why you started this. It's not about the next hit or the next album. It's about your journey. The music will follow if you're being true to yourself." Lily felt a wave of relief wash over her. For the first time in months, she felt like someone truly understood. She had been caught up in the whirlwind of success, in the need to keep moving forward. But now she realized she had to slow down. She had to take a step back and reconnect with her roots, with the music that had made her fall in love with this journey in the first place. "I think you're right," she said, her voice quieter now. "I've lost sight of what's important. I need to go back to the basics." Over the next few weeks, Lily took a break from the studio. She didn't write new songs or work on the album. Instead, she spent her time playing for herself again, sitting at the piano in her quiet apartment and letting the music come naturally. She played songs she had written years ago, pieces that had never been heard by anyone. She didn't care about perfecting them or making them fit into any kind of formula. She just let herself play, letting the emotions flow through her hands and into the keys. As she did this, she rediscovered something important: the joy of creating without any pressure, the joy of simply being in the moment. For the first time in a long time, she felt free. There was no audience, no expectations, just the music and her connection to it. After a few weeks, Lily was ready to return to the studio. But this time she had a new approach. She didn't want to chase trends or follow anyone else's blueprint. She wanted to create music that felt true to her. She began working on the album again, but this time it was different. There was no rush, no pressure. It was just her and the music. Vincent noticed the change immediately. When she played him the first new song she had written after her break, he was taken aback. This is it," he said, his voice full of excitement. "This is the music I've been waiting to hear. It's raw, it's real. You're back, Lily." And with that, everything clicked into place. The album took on a new life. The songs were personal, filled with the emotions she had once kept hidden. There was a vulnerability in her music that resonated with everyone who heard it. It wasn't about perfection. It was about honesty, about telling her story in a way that only she could. As the album began to take shape, Lily felt a renewed sense of purpose. She no longer cared about pleasing the industry or trying to make a commercial hit. She cared about making music that mattered, music that was meaningful to her. And with each song she wrote, she felt more and more connected to herself, to the artist she had always wanted to be. The album was released to critical acclaim, and it quickly gained traction. Fans who had followed her from the beginning were thrilled with the new sound, while new listeners were drawn to the authenticity and vulnerability of the music. It wasn't just about catchy hooks or radio-friendly beats. It was about the depth and honesty in the lyrics. People were drawn to the realness of Lily's music, to the way it made them feel. Lily's career continued to grow, but she had learned an important lesson along the way. Success wasn't about constantly chasing the next thing. It was about staying true to herself and her art. As she toured, performing the songs from her new album, she felt more connected to her audience than ever before. It wasn't just a performance. It was a shared experience, a chance to connect with people through music. At one of her concerts, as she stood on stage looking out at the crowd, Lily realized how far she had come. She had started out as a quiet waitress, uncertain of her place in the world. But now, she was standing in front of a room full of people who connected with her music, who understood her in a way she never thought possible. It was humbling, but it was also empowering. This was just the beginning. She had found her voice, and she wasn't going to let anything take it away.